All she knew, at once, became unfamiliar. The reflection changed, her features darkening, her image distorting. Before her very eyes, the shadows came to life. Reality was twisted, and she fell forward, far too quickly and far too desperately. As her skin met the glass, it should have shattered. Rather, it opened up, beckoning her inward. "Darcy," it whispered. "Come, come." Welcome to Mirrors, a collection of horrors, history, and hauntings. I'm your host, Gabby, and I'm continuing my exploration of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Tonight, I'll be investigating two of its most paranormally active spots, the Jennie Wade House and the Orphanage. When I first started researching and writing about the paranormal, I was shocked to learn that nearly everyone in my family had a story to tell. They've seen full-bodied apparitions, heard the voices of deceased relatives, and grew up in houses where unexplained occurrences were quite common. I've always wondered why this is, if we have some sort of connection to the spirit realm. On the night of June 22nd, I brought some of them along with me for an investigation. We started out eating dinner at Gettysburg Eddie's, which is haunted. I mean, of course, we have to go to a haunted restaurant too. We made a sheets run for snacks and energy drinks, and then, shortly after midnight, we got ready to head to the Jennie Wade House. When we were getting in the car, we looked up and realized it was a full moon. A full strawberry moon, blazing bright red in the night sky, which really added to the vibe. Plus, it was Summerween. If you know, you know. Now, on to the investigation. Mary Virginia Wade, or Jennie Wade, was 20 years old, and she'd lived in Gettysburg her whole life. She didn't live in what is known as the Jennie Wade House, but in a house on Breckenridge Street, where she worked as a seamstress alongside her mother. Jennie's father was in and out of prison, which kept him from being a consistent presence in her life. That also left Jennie responsible to earn money for the family. Her life before the war goes to show that she had an unwavering loyalty, which fueled her mindset that she was just going to do what needed to be done. Jennie's sister, Georgia, lived with her husband in a 2-story red brick duplex on Baltimore Street. That's the Jennie Wade House. Her husband, John Louis McClellan, was serving with the 165th Pennsylvania Infantry and was away for the end of Georgia's pregnancy. Just days before the battle, Lewis Kenneth McClellan was born. It's said that just an hour after Georgia gave birth, there were shouts and pistol shots as Confederates moved into town and ran past the house. It was clear that battle was coming, quickly, disrupting Georgia's much-needed rest and healing. Jennie and her mother moved in with Georgia to help care for her and the baby. A bed was put in the parlor beside the kitchen so that Georgia didn't have to go upstairs. Throughout the battle, the family listened as the house was hit repeatedly by gunfire, shattering the windows. An artillery shell even crashed through the home's second floor, creating a hole in the wall between Georgia's home and the McLean family's space next door. With the home being right beside Cemetery Hill, between Union and Confederate encampments, it was directly in the line of gunfire. One stray bullet even traveled through the first floor window, grazing the bedpost where Georgia laid, shielding her newborn baby. Despite all this, Jennie remained focused, doing what she could do to support her family while getting food and water for nearby Union soldiers. On the morning of July 3rd, Jennie stood in the kitchen baking bread and reading devotionals aloud. From Psalms, she read, "The Lord is my light and salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Georgia was really uncomfortable with the tone of the words being said, so she asked Jennie to stop reading. Eerily, Jennie responded, "If there is anyone in this house that is to be killed today, I hope it is me, for Georgia has that little baby." Shortly after, while kneading dough, Jennie was shot and killed instantly. A bullet had passed through the front door, as well as the door between the kitchen and the parlor, which they had open as a protective measure, and hit her in the back, getting trapped in the body of her corset and striking her heart. So this hole in the door, this bullet hole, is the bullet hole that killed Jennie Wade. And you can see the trajectory of that exact bullet through the kitchen door, which they had left open, hoping that it would protect Jennie as she stood in this exact spot in the kitchen baking bread. In a trance-like state, Mrs. Wade walked into the parlor and informed Georgia that her sister was dead. It was Georgia's screams that brought Union soldiers to the home, where Jennie laid in a pool of blood on the floor. We started our investigation of the Jennie Wade house in the kitchen. So we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. My name is Gabby.
I'm Christina.
I'm Jaden.
I'm Linda.
I'm Alicia.
We want to thank you for sharing your space with us today. We're very excited to be here at the Jennie Wade House with you. We are here because we would like to learn more about you and your story. So whatever you would be open to sharing with us, we would greatly appreciate. And any way that you would like to make yourself known, we are open to. We have this REM pod here. If you touch the red light, it will light up and let us know that you are with us. We also have a camera if you'd like to show yourself. If you would like to say something, we are open to any form of communication. But we are all just going to take a moment here. We've just arrived and gotten everything set up, so we're just going to take a moment to pause and take a deep breath and open ourselves up to what the night has to offer. While sitting in the kitchen, we conducted a spirit box session. A few voices came through, as well as what sounds like a woman's pained moan. We also thought we heard baby in a man's voice, although it could have been lady. Let me know if you hear anything. Our voices are also in the background, trying to make out what's being said.
Scan AM.
Baby? You didn't say baby? The soldiers acted swiftly to help the family get to safety, although Mrs. Wade refused to leave Jennie's body behind. She wrapped Jennie in a quilt and followed as soldiers carried her body upstairs. They kicked through the hole from the artillery shell into the McLean's house, went downstairs, and then outside to the cellar. For 18 hours, Jennie's family and the soldiers sat in the basement, awaiting the end of battle. When the fighting finally ceased, Jennie's body was buried in the garden behind the house. In a symbolic yet somewhat macabre act, the dough she had been kneading was still used, producing 15 loaves of bread, baked by Mrs. Wade herself. When she was killed, Jennie had a photograph of her childhood friend, Jack Skelly, in her apron. It's believed they were engaged to be married. They'd been writing each other while Jack was away fighting for the Union. Their pictures hang in the home, alongside another man, Wesley Culp. Wesley, despite being from Gettysburg and growing up alongside Jennie and Jack, had enlisted to fight for the Confederacy. The story goes that Wesley ran into Jack during the Second Battle of Winchester, after he'd been captured by Confederates. Jack made Wesley promise to pass along a message when he returned to Gettysburg. Jack was injured, and now a prisoner of war. He wanted Jennie to know of his fate. Wesley agreed. However, Wesley was killed during the Battle of Gettysburg, ironically not too far from Culp's Hill, which was named after his family. Jack, too, succumbed to his injuries, passing about 9 days after Jennie's death. The 3 all died, never having heard of the others' deaths. Perhaps the 3 childhood friends have found each other in the afterlife, and Jack and Jenny have been able to live out their romance. This story, a single piece of a vast history, illustrates the destruction of warfare and how lives were left forever changed. It's clear that such tragic events have left a heaviness within the Jennie Wade House. We can only hope that Jenny has found some semblance of peace through the way she has been honored. Jenny is truly a hero for her contributions to the soldiers, which caused her to be the only civilian killed at Gettysburg. Jenny's body was moved to the German Reformed Church and then to her final resting place at the Evergreen Cemetery, where a perpetual flag is flown in her honor. Only one of 2 flown for a woman in the U.S. The other one is flown in Philadelphia in honor of Betsy Ross, who is credited for creating the second official U.S. flag. Georgia went on to become a nurse. Her husband returned from war, and they moved their family to Iowa, where Georgia eventually became president of the Iowa Women's Relief Corps. Throughout her life, she worked tirelessly to ensure her sister got the recognition she deserved, spearheading the construction of a monument in her honor in the Evergreen Cemetery. The Jennie Wade House offers numerous historical and ghost tours to learn more about Jenny and the other spirits of the house. Visitors have reported seeing a young woman in the house, as well as the 1863 inn next door. Some have even smelled bread baking or heard a female voice whispering. I personally feel Jenny's spirit more so in the Evergreen Cemetery, which is one of my favorite spots in Gettysburg. While there is a persisting pain over a life lost so young, I've always felt really peaceful when trying to communicate with Jenny. However, there is an unsettling feeling in the house, which my family and I all felt at some point during our investigation. This is likely due to the other spirits, most notably a male spirit thought to be Mr. Wade. He brings a sort of anger to the house and is very protective over the mannequin depicting Jenny's body in the cellar. I descended the cellar stairs, having my Aunt Linda close the door behind me, and sat in complete darkness. I'm in the cellar of the Jennie Wade House. I'm going solo for this one, and it is pitch black down here. Completely silent. Is there anyone down here? Could you give me a sign? As my eyes adjusted, I could slightly make out the rocking chair, which sits beside the makeshift bed where Jenny's body had laid. I sat across from it, my eyes trained on this rocking chair, like I could sense someone was sitting there. On the second floor, there's child spirits reported. In George's bedroom, there's a little boy seen in the corner who has never shared his name. And there is a mirror in this room. Every time I have toured this house, I've felt so drawn to this mirror. And like I look in it and my heart drops. I don't know, there's an intensity to this specific mirror, and I don't know anything about the history of it. I don't know if there's any ghost stories connected to it, but I don't know what it is. So I'm just standing in front of it, looking into the mirror to see if anything will happen. The mirror's sort of distorted, so just to look at myself, I look very strange. And I also look like I'm moving a lot. I'm not. Also, being up here by myself, I'm hearing footsteps. Definitely hearing footsteps from the other side of the house. There's no one over there. There's a practice called scrying, which is said to help us access our unconscious minds. As you look into a reflective surface, like a mirror, images can begin to emerge. I had a quite strange experience when looking into this mirror. I was standing completely still, but it looked like I was swaying forward into the mirror. I also started to hear faint footsteps on the other side of the house, which was completely empty. When I'd look away from the mirror, the footsteps would stop. Looking back to the mirror, they'd start again. It was like I was being transported, opening myself up to things unseen and unheard. After visiting each location, I compile my photos, videos, audio recordings, and written notes as a basis for the episode. I then delve further into the history and hauntings, using my prior knowledge and what I learned on location to guide my research. While writing today's episode, I couldn't find any information on the mirror in the books or online articles I read. Then, I came across a video from the YouTube channel Paranormal Quest. In the video, the guide points directly to this mirror, explaining that the glass predates the Civil War. In the mirror, many have seen a woman in black, her face veiled in black lace, a practice reminiscent of Victorian mourning. The guide goes on to describe another Victorian mourning practice, covering mirrors with black cloth. This was rooted in the belief that when a person dies, their soul goes to the light. They'd cover the mirrors to prevent souls from mistaking the shimmering glass for the light and becoming trapped within its confines. That's why mirrors are so often the center of hauntings. Because mirrors are no longer covered, many believe they are portals to the other side. Maybe this mirror has a trapped spirit, or maybe this woman is a manifestation of the grief and tragedy within the Jennie Wade House. Downstairs, on the other side of the house, there is a clock, original to the home, which was donated by the McLean family. In the same room, a display case houses envelopes sent between Jack and Jennie, the artillery shell that struck the house, as well as the original floorboard where Jennie fell when she was shot, still stained with her blood. Jennie's story has become a platform to understand the civilian experience in Gettysburg during the Civil War. I've been really interested in exploring civilian stories as a way to draw connections. For example, Jennie would visit the orphanage across the street, which is our next stop. Also, as mentioned in episode 2, Jennie was shot from the Farnsworth House, a field hospital and Confederate stronghold during the battle. Gettysburg is so unique because the entire town is haunted. The spirits here have a connection to the town as a whole, especially those who lived in Gettysburg beyond the battle. It's also important to remember that the entire town was a battlefield. The buildings, the streets, the land, it's all tainted by the devastating losses and unimaginable carnage. Even if a certain place is known for specific, consistent spirits, we could possibly be communicating with one of thousands of soldiers and nurses who feel tied to this town. And yes, these buildings are old. Every noise we hear isn't necessarily paranormal. But here, you truly never know. In the aftermath of battle, a soldier's body was discovered, his identity unknown. This was certainly not uncommon. What set him apart was a small photograph in his pocket, a photo of his 3 children. A volunteer surgeon named Dr. J. Francis Bournes saw the picture and was deeply impacted by the children and their unnamed father. He had copies made and distributed them in newspapers across the northern states. One person in the small town of Portville, New York, saw the photo, recognized the children, and took it to their mother, a woman named Philinda Humiston. Her husband was identified as Amos Humiston, a soldier who had been fighting with the 154th New York Infantry. The photograph was sold to raise funds for the family, which allowed Philinda to move her children to Gettysburg, where she started the National Soldiers' Orphans Homestead. The orphanage opened in November 1866. After the battle, there were many children left orphaned, creating the need for such a place. At the time, most women worked at home. Even if they did have a job, they certainly weren't paid a living wage. If a child's father died in war, there was a perception that the mothers were unable to care for their children. That being said, many kids ended up in orphanages, even if they had a living parent. The photograph of Philinda and Amos's children hangs in the orphanage today, and was where our attention first fell when starting the investigation. My cousin Jaden had visited Gettysburg a few months prior on a school trip. Each student had been assigned a soldier to research, and out of pure coincidence, Jaden was assigned Amos Humiston. She realized this as we stood before the photo, pulling her phone out to show us that she had the exact picture in her camera roll. The picture and the story behind it really resonated with me. It represents the fact that the orphanage was founded out of love and the desire to care for children, which stands as a stark contrast to where the orphanage ended up. Jaden is 13, and my other cousin Alicia is 10. Both of them braved the orphanage to join me for my investigation. They share my spooky gene, so I was so excited that they wanted to come along. We stopped at Walmart to get some toy cars and Kilwins for some candy. Kilwins is a necessary stop if you're in Gettysburg, by the way. Alicia and Jaden set out the toys, as well as some motion detecting equipment. They were in the part of the upstairs that is on the land once used as the outdoor play area. As for me, I wanted to center my investigation around the infamous cellar. Shortly after 2 a.m., I headed downstairs alone. Quick note, I noticed you can hear what sounds like a kid's voice in the background of this recording, right toward the end. It's totally possible that it's one of my cousins. However, this was after I had closed the cellar door, and they were behind another closed door 2 rooms away. My mic is also designed to really only pick up the voices of the person wearing it unless someone else is talking right next to them. So I'm not totally sure about this one. Listen closely and let me know what you think. I'm closing the cellar door and turning out the light. I set up some equipment and set along the wall. Everything was pitch black. My name is Gabby. I'd love to hear your name. I have a few different things that I brought for you. So the first thing is that bear that's on the floor. You can see it has a green light in it. If you touch that green light, then the bear will light up more. It'll show me some red lights that let me know that you're here. I also have this REM pod over here in the corner that has a red light on it too, and it will light up if you touch it. Again, will let me know that you're here with me. There were no responses, just an overwhelming quiet. My ears are ringing from how quiet it is down here. Felinda Humiston eventually remarried and moved to a new house. A new headmistress took over at the orphanage. Her name was Rosa Carmichael. I wasn't able to find much information about Rosa's background or her life beyond the orphanage. Not that she deserves to have her story told. So I'll sum her up in 2 words: pure evil. If the children misbehaved, no matter how small and insignificant their actions, Rosa chained them to the wall. She'd dangle them over barrels full of freezing water or lock them outside in the winter. She even enlisted a group of older boys, known as the stick boys, to beat the young girls. There was one punishment, though, most feared by the children, and that was the pit. In the back of the cellar, down a long, dark hallway, there's a small alcove. Children would be left down there alone for days on end, with very little, if any, food and water. While sitting along the wall, I was facing down the hallway towards the pit. After a while, I heard the occasional shuffling noise, or even a footstep or two, all of which came from the direction of the pit. There's just a knock. Is anyone down here with me? There's more movement. Everything I'm hearing is down the hallway toward the pit. I decided to go down and investigate. I have kind of a sick feeling in my stomach even doing this, but I'm walking down to the pit. I'm gonna go in it. And I'm gonna turn out my light. I just can't even fathom the fear experienced in this very, very small space. One Christmas Eve, a young boy was found locked in the outhouse, screaming for help. This led to an investigation into the orphanage, although somehow nothing came of it. Later in 1876, Rosa was put on trial and charged of assault and battery on behalf of an orphan named George London. Are you ready for this? Rosa was fined a whole $20, and she was allowed to keep her job as the headmistress. She went right back to her ways, even intensifying her cruel forms of punishment. The town was already wary of Rosa, but suspicion was heightened when the children didn't go to the annual Memorial Day procession for the first time. The townspeople took control, forcing Rosa from Gettysburg in 1877. By the end of that year, the orphanage was closed once and for all, and that was the end of something that had started out of good intentions to help the community. President Ulysses S. Grant had even visited at a point in time, showing that it was once an admirable institution. We'll never know how Rosa evaded the accusations of abuse and neglect for as long as she did, or what happened to her afterward. Regarding the hauntings of the orphanage, there's a clear dichotomy between the energies here. There's the children, who have played with the toys left out for them or made themselves known through unexplained voices during EVP sessions, which is cool to know after the fact considering I might have caught an unexplained voice. We felt this lightness when we first got to the building. As we set out the toys and explained what the equipment does, there was a hum in the air that was almost playful. And then there's a darkness, a suffocating darkness. Some believe it's Rosa herself. Others think the torture experienced here conjured something inhuman, demonic even. Sitting in the basement alone, I actually got a headache from the pressure I felt. The air made me almost claustrophobic. I tried to channel that feeling to grasp even a fraction of the fear those poor children must have felt down there alone. The more I sat there, my limbs got heavy and I just felt really sad. Just being down there and thinking about the children who were subject to such pain was a lot. Around 3 a.m., I made my way upstairs and joined my family. At that point, I felt emotionally exhausted and a bit frustrated that nothing undeniably paranormal had happened. Selfishly, I wanted something to happen from my own research and documentation. But I also wanted the kids to know that we were there. They were heard and cared for. And it angered me so much to think they could have lived a day of their life thinking otherwise. There hadn't been any activity with the equipment or toys upstairs either, although Jaden did see a door slightly open on its own. As she was telling me about it, there was a thud coming from the direction of the cellar. We all froze and looked to each other. Then, footsteps. Clear footsteps. Followed by the rattling of metal, like keys or chains. I can't describe how I felt in that moment. Adrenaline was coursing through me, and my heart rate shot up. I'd wanted something so clear and undeniable to happen all night. And now, it finally was. To associate something unseen with such recognizable human noises was honestly terrifying. And then, a door slam. I won't lie, we ran, and we were ready to leave that place without a second thought, until our tour guide stepped around the corner. She'd been the one to let us into the Jennie Wade House and Orphanage, and as far as we knew, she'd be waiting for us outside after the investigation. We weren't expecting her to come into the building, let alone through a different entrance near the cellar door. We also didn't think she'd be there for another half hour or so long story short, when we heard those noises, we definitely didn't think it was her. It was all a misunderstanding in the end, and totally not paranormal, but it sure was a hell of a way to end the night. I wasn't going to share that so that I could maintain the image that nothing scares me, but I decided to keep it real. I also want to talk about doubt for a second. It's a valid part of exploring the paranormal. For days following the investigation, I was honestly disappointed that I didn't get any clear, undeniable evidence. Listening back to my recordings when making this episode, I caught more than I thought I did. But it's still easy to question everything. And it's good to question everything. It was obviously really cool to be in these historic locations alone and learn about them alongside my family. But I really wanted something to happen. It's easy to put pressure on investigations, especially when you believe in it so strongly and have had unexplained encounters before. Moving forward, I'm challenging myself to just stay open. As much as this journey is about going into haunted places and hearing their stories, it's also for me to delve into my own connection to the paranormal. There's a term called clairsentience, which is the ability to feel emotional or physical energy that is imperceptible to the 5 standard senses. Researching clairsentience, I thought of the sadness I felt in the orphanage basement. The sadness that so quickly shifted to anger and anxiety. I thought of the horror I felt in the dead-end woods, or even the time I felt a throbbing and unexplainable pain in my neck when walking up to the building where General John F. Reynolds died. I later learned that he was shot in, you guessed it, his neck. I come from a line of highly intuitive, creative, and emotional women. Gettysburg has shown me that, and it's helped me see it in myself too. It will take practice and patience, but this is just the beginning. Thank you for listening, and thank you to all of my family who has supported me, joined me on investigations, and gone with me to see horror movies. And of course, thank you to Ghostly Images of Gettysburg for helping me set up this investigation. If you ever find yourself in Gettysburg, make sure to check out their tours and investigations, as well as all of the other fascinating locations we've talked about. This concludes our exploration into the hauntings of Gettysburg. For now. Until next time, stay spooky. This has been Mirrors, Horrors, History, and Hauntings, produced and hosted by Gabby Frye.